Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Tigers Down Under. I'm your host, Alex, and with me today I have Logan. How are you, Logan?
I'm doing well, Alex. Happy birthday for yesterday. It's
Thank
good to
you.
be back here and celebrating some pretty positive results.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I realized that we were playing on my birthday, we had Rochdale, and I thought, we generally get a win on my birthday, but given the way the season's gone and how we tend to do against those lesser teams, I did think there might have been a 1-0 defeat coming, but luckily it wasn't the case. It was a fantastic win in that game. We'll get to that game in a little bit, but I think since we haven't done a podcast in a couple of weeks, it might be good to just refresh everyone on results since that last episode, starting with that Wigan game, and we'll sort of run through all of them, any big talking points out of them, because I know, especially recently with the Wimbledon game, there was an interesting talking point, I guess. It sort of split Hull City Twitter with the Wilks penalty, but a few things like that we'll cover along the way. But yeah, let's start with that Wigan game. I think it was the biggest turnaround between two league fixtures between two sides since the 1920s, going from an 8-0 defeat to a 5-0 victory. What a way to get revenge. I think I saw the stat that all 5 goals were scored by players that were in the starting 11 that day against Wigan when we lost 8-0. So certainly must have been keen to rectify things and to put right things from that last game, and certainly did so.
Oh, absolutely. Anytime you beat a team 5-0, you're entitled to be pretty happy with those celebrations. And I think that, as you mentioned, the result was an interesting one, given the fact that the last fixture was probably on Sky cameras the biggest, most insulting defeat that I can remember in our time, or certainly since you and I have been following City. It was a really difficult and bitter pill to kind of swallow, being the butt of not just national jokes, because I know that a lot of the English press talked about it, but I remember seeing it being tweeted on all sorts of European Twitter feeds and things like that as well. So it got international recognition. Such was the nature of the loss. So to be able to turn it around and respond with a 5-0 victory, it's certainly the best way to rectify such a disappointing result. And I guess that we talked about it before when we previewed that Wigan fixture. I mean, Michael was too scared to come on the show because he didn't want to be the omen in case that result went poorly for us. But there was a lot of changes in the teams, and as we mentioned, the difficulties that Wigan are facing probably played a lot into those fixtures and the way that we were able to fashion the victory in the manner that we did. And fascinatingly enough, Wigan haven't had too poor results since then either. So,
yeah.
Credit to Wigan. I think that they've tried to respond from that, the shellacking that we did administer to them.
Well, it's interesting, yeah, because you look at that game and you think, well, 5-0 win perhaps was because of the quality of the opposition. I think they were playing quite a young goalkeeper. Certainly some of the goals that were scored, you could argue a more experienced goalkeeper might have saved them. But you look the next week, I think, or the very next game when they played Lincoln, I think, and they took the lead against Lincoln and were only very narrowly defeated. So they've certainly started to string a couple of results together since then that, they might not have got the points on the board, but certainly starting to look a lot better and play a lot better than that 5-0 scoreline would have suggested. And then I guess from our point of view as well, I mean, you mentioned the changes in the side, but even just looking at, Wilks scoring, I think it was his first career hat-trick in that game. And he's certainly, as the title of this episode would suggest, he's certainly got his scoring boots on now, and he's been a big factor in, we look at the 5 games that we're going to talk about, taking 10 points from 15 points, is certainly no mean feat. And, he's coming into a great run of form at the right time of the season.
Absolutely. And he is our marquee goal scorer, or the one that we do expect to, be the most prolific for us. So any run of games where we've got him scoring, it's incredibly promising for us to see. And we delight in seeing that. And, long may that continue as well.
Yeah, definitely. And also, Lewis Potter getting back amongst the goals. We've been a bit critical of him lately. He's been in bad form, but he's been in bad form in the sense that, he's still getting in the right positions, but just wasn't able to find that finishing touch, which, you get frustrated when your strikers or your forwards aren't scoring goals, but at least if they're getting in the right positions, you know that there's a goal around the corner. And certainly he managed to get one against Wigan. I don't actually think, though, that he actually managed to score in any of the games after that point. But you'd hope that having got amongst the goals in that Wigan game, perhaps that gives him a bit of confidence back, and hopefully can find his scoring boots over the next few games.
Yeah, we sure hope so. And I guess that reflecting on that December where there was, all that speculation around his contract, I think that there was some people were probably getting a little bit too far ahead of themselves, that, he was almost being hailed as the city messiah, so to speak, with we need to get him signed up because of what he means to the future. And I'm not making an argument against that. I just think that certainly over the month of February, we've seen, I guess, the rawness that Kane Lewis-Potter does have. He's still a young player. He's still incredibly green. Absolutely is there, some incredibly strong signs there. And he's certainly a player that we do, look for in the future to really, get City going. And we hope that he's part of the furniture for a long time. But just the glimpses of the frailties and things that he still does have a long way to go on has really shown in the last couple of months. And that's with full respect to him, because as you say, there's still so many promising insights and things that we do see in the games that he is still doing extremely well. So, I mean, if Kane Lewis-Potter is out of form at the moment, if this is what out of form looks like, then I'm pretty happy with it.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, look, it's easy to forget that he's only 20. I mean, he was amongst the first team last season as I guess a substitute most of the time, but it's easy to forget that this is essentially his first full season as a pro, starting most weeks. And so he's gonna drop off at various points in the season. He's not going to have that sort of consistent output that an older player would have. You look at Jared Bowen's first full season for us in the championship, where he was very strong over the start of that season, and then definitely dipped off at the end of that season because he doesn't have that fitness base that a lot of the older players will have. So it's a great learning experience for Kane, and I'm sure he'll come back next season fitter and stronger and smarter for the season that he's had this year. So it's been a fantastic season by him so far, and I think measuring his output this season just on goals is probably not the way to go about it. So look, if he can keep performing in the team and keep playing his role, I think that's definitely the main thing. Yeah,
absolutely. I think there's no argument as to how important he is to us moving forward, and I think everybody recognizes that, and it's going to be a joy to watch him grow. And as you mentioned, if Jared Bowen is that template that we're hoping to, repeat, then we hope that Kane Lewis-Potter is that guy, because, he is a fantastic player for the club and obviously wants to be there.
Definitely. Well, so my MVP votes for this game, I suspect, they're probably a pretty easy three to give. I've given Wilks the 3 votes, hat-trick hero in that game. I've gone Keno for the 2 votes for getting his goal and for having a pretty decent all-round game as well. And Magennis, the other goal scorer, for the 1 vote. What were your thoughts on those?
Yeah, I'll agree with all 3. And I guess that play devil's advocate, any team that keeps a clean sheet in a 5-0 thump probably gets overlooked. So, I mean, credit to the City defence. But as you mentioned, when you score 5 goals and they're your contributors, I'm pretty happy with those 3.
Fair enough. The next game, probably a bit more disappointing, because we got off to a brilliant start in that game against Doncaster, up 3-1 at halftime. And I personally, I was sitting there thinking at halftime that, geez, okay, we've really found our scoring boots again. We're going to go on this brilliant run of form. And it came crashing back to earth a little bit in that second half, with Doncaster managing to get back to drawing at 3-3. Goal in the 102nd minute, no less, to get that equaliser for them, which is definitely a frustrating way to concede any game. But, trying to look at the positives, silver linings, Wilks with another 2 goals to make it 5 goals in 2 games, which is a tremendous return for him. And at least, we'll talk in a second about the Ipswich game, but I would much rather be drawing a game 3-3 than, obviously you're getting a point out of it. You'd rather do that than losing a game 1-0, but I'd rather be drawing a game 3-3 and at least showing that if the forwards are in that form and that they're scoring those goals, and we're looking a lot more creative and active than we otherwise have been.
Yeah, The Doncaster one was an interesting one because I know it was a game of two halves. Apologies for using that cliche. I realize that it is far overused, but what was so disappointing about it was you got the feeling that when we went to 3-1, that it was almost a game that we couldn't lose because we just looked by far the better team. And as you mentioned, how prolific we seemed. We not only got the shooting boots on, but we looked like we could have easily got a couple more. In fact, even in that second half, there was two glaring opportunities that I think we hit the post on both of them or just missed that. There could have been 6 or 7 goals in that game against Doncaster, and that's not an exaggeration. It was just the way that the game was incredibly open, and for us to only take a point from that, granted, it's a point against a team that was really flying at the time and is a top 6 rival. It was just disappointing given the fashion and the manner that we played in that first half. It was some of the best football I've seen City play.
And I mean, it was interesting. You look at the subs that we made in that second half, and we took Doherty off for Slater. We took Magennis off for White, which I guess you could say is like for like, offensively minded, which in a way is a little bit unusual. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily think of us as generally going into our shells when we've had a lead in games. We've generally tried to run out games and if anything, kill them off. I don't know if there was something in it about it being one of McCann's former clubs that he was, perhaps wanting to just shore up the win or something like that. But it did feel a little bit like those substitutions were a bit more negative and sort of invited Doncaster on in a way. What did you, or did you just say it as, viewing them with the benefit of hindsight, having seen the result, that perhaps those subs were just part and parcel?
I think it's a really hard one to comment on. I think Grant McCann is a manager that I find intriguing with as far as the substitutions that he has made this season. There's often times where you can see games kind of fizzling out and you expect him to make a sub and they don't come. So, to find ourselves in the position that we were in, and for him to go down that avenue, like if we're up 3-1 and he goes and makes, substitutions like you've just mentioned, like I don't necessarily have a problem with him trying something, but I just there's no real rhyme or reason with how he seems to operate. And I think that, it'd be a very interesting conversation to have with the man himself. And as you mentioned, find out what he was thinking at the time and why he was thinking that way. He's certainly unpredictable, and he's done nothing to give me confidence that he would be, a suitable manager in playoffs to kind of back, and can make some really smart decisions and read the game here for us. And that concerns me a little bit. In saying that, I think that we still had the chances that, we didn't take. And so you could look at the substitutions he made. If we end up taking one of those chances and, go up 4-2 or, go on with the game and win comfortably, well, then he looks like a genius. So it was an odd game with some more Grant McCann decisions that I don't think were too absurd, but at the same time, again, unpredictable.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I guess earlier in the season, it did feel like, I'm trying to think. I think it was the Crewe Alexandra game. It was somebody very early in the season where it was 0-0, and he did make a few really good subs towards the end of the game that won us the game. But it does feel like whether it's the pressures getting to him, whether it's I don't know what it is, that later in the season, you're right, it doesn't feel like there's that sort of game-changing plan in place. And as you're saying, like that's the most worrying scenario is the playoffs, because that is the most pressured situation where you sort of wonder or worry that would the pressure get to him a bit too much? Would he be a bit frozen with indecision on do you make the changes? Don't you make the changes? Do you, sit on a 2-0 lead, or do you go for the third to kill it off? So it's a really worrying situation in that sense. You sort of hope, I guess, that we don't get to the playoffs. We go up automatically, but I guess that's a problem for another day. But it was an interesting game. I think the referee played a part in the result as well. I think that was the game where Doherty was trying to be treated for a groin injury, and the ref basically gave him a yellow for time wasting and getting off the field to be treated, which was a bit bizarre. And then, of course, the penalty was reasonably soft, but seemed as if he was sort of caving to pressure from a non-call earlier. And then, the final goal coming in the 12th minute of injury time. And all the kerfuffle around that as well. So, external factors are well at play in that result.
Yeah, certainly. And, you could kind of see it happening in some ways that the City defence was sitting deeper and deeper, although still looked incredibly dangerous on the counter-attack. But because we kept dropping back, and as you mentioned, there was it almost felt like any time the ball went into the box and made any kind of contact, the Doncaster appeals were outrageous. And you can only imagine what that would have been like in a packed stadium as well. The fact that we're still playing in COVID times, like what would that have done to influence the referee's decision?
Yeah.
And I guess that just speaks into, again, like, it doesn't matter what team you're playing in this division. If you're going to sit back and allow them the opportunity to attack, like, some of the decisions that I've seen given by referees in League One this season are absurd. Like, they really are some of the most head scratching decisions.
And you see it in the Premier League as well, in fairness. I mean, Lee Mason in who was Brighton playing somebody the other day where he gave the free kick, blew the whistle to take it. They took it. He blew his whistle So it seems to be happening at every level. But you're right. In League One, it's certainly happening a lot.
And if we also, to then like flick the switch here and say, well, it's very rare that we find City getting penalties, and I'm not it's not just a gripe, because obviously we look at it through the City lens, but I mean, then we think that, and then the game against Wimbledon, we end up getting
2 penalties. Yeah.
And so it the law of averages shows that it does ebb and flow, but I think it stands as a stern reminder for us not to be one of those teams that is happy to kind of drop back and invite pressure, because that doesn't seem to be a healthy formula in League One, because goals seem to come everywhere and from every team. There's no real team in this league that doesn't hurt you.
Definitely. Well, who are your 3 MVP players for this one?
Yeah, it's again, like you feel like you've got to kind of go with the goal scorers. I thought Wilks was brilliant. George Honeyman as well. He in a game that's end to end, you do expect him to kind of show up and continue to be the man that he is. I think I also had Greaves down for 1 point.
Yeah, and I think I was pretty similar to you. I've just got Greaves and Honeyman around the other way. So Wilks for the 3, Greaves the 2, and Honeyman the 1. Magena's probably a little bit stiff not to get in the votes with that goal, but I thought Greaves had a great game. And look, Greaves is having a fantastic season, and we do talk about him quite a bit, but it does sometimes get forgotten that he was a League 2 player last season and was essentially a youth player who, by virtue from his point of view, the relegation has opened that door for him at the club to come into the first team, and he's taken it with both hands and has looked fantastic.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that we can't sing Jacob Greaves' praises enough on this podcast, because again, we've talked about how blessed we've been over the years in the centre half positions, and for a young guy like him to come in and do what he's done, he's great to watch, and he's proving that not only is he a League One defender, he could certainly be destined for bigger things. Absolutely.
Probably the less said about this game, the better, but it was sort of typical City performance in a 1-0 defeat to Ipswich. Worrying signs, I guess, because it is a trend this season that when we have these sorts of games, we don't even manage shots on target. So, you can you can tell reasonably early in games like this what sort of City performance you're going to get, because we just look a bit lethargic, bit out of ideas, uncreative. And just couldn't find our way through. And, Ipswich took the lead because it forces us to sit back, which is a sort of an unfamiliar role for us, where we can't dominate games. It was just a tricky one for us to get back into, and we just never looked like fashioning in a chance.
No, absolutely not. I guess that, again, this speaks into the type of league that League One is, with the games coming thick and fast. I mean, we've played an absurd amount of games, especially when you consider that we had a couple of postponed games in December to have played the quantity that we have.
I still can't figure out how we've played the most games in the division. I'm scratching my head, because you think about the fact we made the EFL Trophy quarterfinals, and as you say, had a few postponements. I'm just thinking, how many postponements has everyone else had?
That's right. And so it does get that feeling that, the fixtures haven't been too kind for us. So, I mean, in some ways, we have to expect these slip-ups. I'm not making excuses for how dour we were against Ipswich, but when the games do come in the fashion that they have been, it's not, beyond the realms of possibility to have those nights where we are incredibly flat. And again, it continues to serve as that reminder that we can't take any team in this division lightly, regardless of where they sit on the table. And I think it was 3-0 in the opening fixture against Ipswich, and they didn't even look anything close to being in our level of play. And so for them to then come back and do what they did to us in a granted a dour 1-0 performance, I mean, it just goes to show that what momentum can be like. And each fixture on the night, it can go either way.
Yeah, and I think from memory with this game, I think Honeyman and Doherty had injury doubts going into it, and then both pulled up for the game. And I sort of wonder in retrospect if starting both of them was kind of cause for some of our issues, that perhaps they weren't at their best. I think from memory, I think Crowley started this game as well, and Crowley's he's a weird player because he's one of those players where you look at him and he looks like he's got everything to his game, and he looks like a fantastic player. Yeah, Crowley started in that one, and yet he just doesn't seem to fit the system, unfortunately. And it seems as if that whenever he starts, it's almost like we're just missing a piece to our game. I think you look at, for instance, Alfie Jones is almost a completely different player to Crowley, but you stick him in that midfield three and he can sort of anchor it and let Doherty and Honeyman play that freer role. And suddenly we look much more potent. Whereas you put Crowley at the tip of the three instead, and you sort of have Honeyman and Doherty at the base, I suppose, or rotating. A bit more free, and we don't somehow look less creative. It's a really bizarre sort of situation.
Yeah, it is. And particularly when you consider how much of a great passer of the ball Crowley is. I mean, I loved watching, and we'll talk about it shortly, but even in the Rochdale game, when he came on late in the piece, it just like he was full of energy, and some of his service was unbelievable. And I mean, that was, could be a blueprint for how to use him moving forward. But I agree. He doesn't seem to fit the current system that City play under with the way that we run our midfield. But that's not to say that there isn't still, roles for him, and it certainly does have a use at City. But it will be interesting to see how McCann, sets up his team and tries to get Dan Crowley involved.
Yeah, no, fair enough. And look, I mean, it's tough to pick 3 votes in a game like this with such a sort of average performances. I'm sort of going back on my words a little bit because I'll say, Elder for the 3 votes, but then I do have Doherty and Honeyman as the 2 and the 1 in this one, just because it was such a flat performance all round. I still thought that they, in that midfield 3, were at least trying to create something as lethargic as they were.
Look, this game was so forgettable for me. I didn't even do a 3-2-1. So let's stick with the 3-2-1 that you've got, and
move on from it.
Yeah, I think, and I guess the sad part is, Alex, we're not unaccustomed to these dour performances every now and then, and I think that's when we look at the run in and the fixtures, we've got an incredibly favourable run between now and the end of the season. There's going to be a lot more of these type of games midweek where we're backing up, and it's the 3rd game in 7 or 8 days or whatever it is, and they will be the crucial ones that we need to get points from.
Yeah, and I mean, look, we'll look at the Rochdale game in a second, and even with the Wimbledon game, I think from memory, the sides around us were dropping points over these last 2 games, and the results have all started to go our way, and it sort of underlines your point that it's such an unpredictable league, and points can be dropped from anywhere, goals can come from anywhere, and as you say, everyone is, there's never been a season like this where you're essentially playing every single midweek. We've had a game every single midweek other than those postponements, which is just, it's so, and you think players have had limited pre-seasons as well. No, not really any international breaks. I think there was 1 or 2 early in the season, but that was it. It must be so tough on these players to be backing up week in, week out. And it is a huge strength of our squad that we have as deep a squad as we have. And it will be used to its limits to get us through this season. And, I think it's testament to the squad that we're in the position we are. And we do have to remind ourselves that, come the start of the season, we were sort of saying that a mid-table finish would be adequate, and that we didn't really have aspirations for promotion, or if we did, it was sort of we should be promoted, but who knows what's actually going to happen. So our expectations have been raised quite substantially, and it's on the back of the squad performing in the way it has.
And speaking further into that, you do have to remember the mentality that respectfully, the lower teams in League One, what they think about, City turning up to their stadium or visiting the KCOM. Like, we are in their eyes a big club, and particularly from the fact that we've sat in the top couple of places from the beginning of the season is, those opportunities to come and pick off a weary or, wounded Tigers outfit midweek after a long stretch of games is exactly how they look at that fixture against us. And I think that speaks even in more to the mentality that we have to have. We have to, approach games like we are a better side, and we have to play fluent football. And regardless of whether we're tired and all the, whatever excuses that you do kind of come up with over a 45 plus game season, is the rotation of the squad is critical. We need to make sure that all the players are getting involved and making sure that we're able to manage the workload that the players are under.
Definitely. Well, look, we did get back to winning ways against Wimbledon with a 3-0 win. And as you sort of referred to before, we did get a bit, well, I don't know if you call it lucky. We were fortunate. We got 2 penalties in that game. I guess the big sort of talking point out of this one that split the fan base a little bit was Wilks' reaction to, I think from memory, he was a bit frustrated that he hadn't been passed the ball earlier in the play where he was probably in a good position to score. So when he sort of earned the chance to score a penalty, he grabbed the ball, wanted to take the penalty. I'm not so much. I sort of fall somewhere in the middle on this one, where I'm not so much frustrated that he wanted to score the goal. I think it's great. I think if you asked any of the 11 on the field, they'd all say they want to score a goal. It's more the fact that when the captain comes over to you and says, give the ball to the penalty taker in Magennis, and he shoves the captain, that's where I have a little bit of a problem. I think it's great if they've cleared the air afterwards and it's all gone, then that's great. We can all move on, draw a line under it. That was my only concern with it. I don't know. How did you see it?
Yeah, I think we had a quiet conversation on a messenger about this as it kind of happened, or I believe it was the next morning. And I guess there's a few variables to think about. Is that tenacity from our striker in Malik Wilks of wanting to get on the score sheet again, granted whatever the circumstances are, I really enjoy that. And I think I share that, that same thought pattern as you in regard to that particular aspect. There was a few things that, as I kind of unpacked it a little bit more, was thinking about the fact Magennis had already scored. So, he was probably feeling confident from the spot, as it was. And full credit to him giving up the penalty once he saw the reaction that it had elicited from Malik Wilks. And I think that he's kind of the unsung hero in this story, because he could have just simply been greedy and said, yeah, I'll take it, put it away, scored his double. And I guess in so many ways that probably wouldn't resolve it. But Louis Coyle as well, I thought, even though he copped the push from Wilks and was clearly unhappy about it, he was very quick to dismiss it afterwards. And you saw that, their celebrations, he walked over, they had a quiet chat, and it seemed like Wilks getting the goal had been dead and buried.
If he'd missed.
And again, like, that could have changed the complexion of but I'd be really interested to see what got said behind closed doors, and at what point, what Grant McCann said to them afterwards, and even particularly what Louis Coyle said to Malik Wilks when he went back up and spoke to him. But look, I think it was dealt with at the time. I'm not sure about the ramifications of it at training and whatever else happened, but it was great that, I think, from our perspective, that he did score the goal, and it was water off a duck's back, or at least appears to be. But there probably is concerning in the sense that Malik Wilks probably got some kind of reputation for his temper, and he's been
that's true.
A colourful character in the past. So. And particularly with the off-field incident that that he was a part of as well. So look, all of those things taken into consideration, I'm sure it will be dealt with. I'm glad that Malik Wilks scored to keep his run going, and it didn't upset the role. But it's always worrying when you see your lead striker pushing your captain.
And especially at 2-0 up, it's not like it was, it's not like we were losing, or it's not like we've been on a losing run. It's not like Wilks has been out of form. It's not like there was anything to cause the frustrations as much as it did. It was a bit strange that, you wouldn't really think at 2-0 up in a game that you would have like tempers fraying like that. But, as we're saying, I mean, it's good to have that passion. It's good to see the players wanting to score and wanting to do well. That's always good. And yeah, when we get to our MVP votes, I've sort of taken it into consideration when it comes to Magennis that he's definitely the hero of the hour. And I just love the fact that when he gave the ball to Wilks and he gives him the little shove as if to say, you'd better not miss this penalty now. I've given you the chance, tuck it away. And he did. So, look, it was the best possible outcome. I don't quite agree with the people on Twitter who are, sort of using any excuse to bash McCann and to sort of say he should have pulled Wilks off the ground. It showed he's soft or whatever. I don't agree with that at all. I just think, as I sort of said, it starts and ends for me with the not listening to the captain. And, you don't want that to set a precedent. You don't want the captain's word to sort of be undermined by that, but it doesn't look like it has been. So, as we say, I think you probably draw a line under it. But look, talking about the game more broadly, this is the sort of game that, you look at the result against Burton, you look at the result against MK Dons, other games like that where we have dropped those points against a weaker side and made no mistake in this one to win the game. So, starting to see, and in the Rochdale game as well, you're starting to see this turning the corner against these weaker sides, as you were alluding to before.
Yeah, and that's as we mentioned with the stretch of games heading in between now and the end of the season, we do have an incredibly favourable draw, and that has to be the area that City are able to pick up on. I mean, if it's the criticism, we look at the table now where we're sitting in second. Granted that there's some teams behind us that do have games in hand, and that's okay. We've talked about we would rather points on the board. It's hard to criticise a team that is sitting in the automatic positions, but I guess if you then take that a step further and say, well, what could it have been if we've taken points from the fixtures that we absolutely should have taken points from? We could be leading this league by 10 to 12 points, and I know that that's in a perfect world, and we certainly don't live in one. But if we're going to be really honest and transparent with how we assess City, it's not good enough that the positions we've allowed ourselves to be in to be sitting where we are. Because a lot of our losses have come against teams that we are, have played far better football on them the day and do have a far deeper squad then.
Yeah. And look, I think you raise a good point as well, is that, it gets lost a little bit in these discussions of games in hand and whatnot, that yes, these other sides, if they won all their games in hand, would be above us. And that's not taking into account, I assume, some of their games in hand are against each other, so that, they can't all be winning all their games. But you also take into account that then means that there will be weekends or midweek rounds of football where City will be able to rest, and these other sides will be continuing to play these games just to catch up to City. So points on the board at this stage of the season is actually a better position to be in, even if, it's not strictly in our hands because other sides could win those games and take over us. But it means that when those sides are playing those games, we'll be able to rest the squad. We'll be able to have the training sessions. We'll be able to rest injuries and rehabilitate injuries and focus on that run-in. So I think we're in a very strong position at this stage of the season to be where we are in the table and with the number of games that we've played as well, because I think we're on the 33 games played. So we've got just 13 games left now. It's really sort of that final third of the season, final quarter of the season, to get under our belts and hopefully keep that spot in the automatic places.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's going to be, we say, I feel like this is a broken record, but it's going to be so interesting to see what happens. We know what the challenge is now, and we do have some big games coming up. We do play the flying high first place Peterborough very shortly, but with all due respect, a lot of the teams between now and the end of the season are very, very winnable games.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, then just before we move on to the Rochdale game, I'll get your 3 votes for the MVP, and then I'll give mine. Yeah,
look, I'm still going to give Wilks a point here, but I think that granted the incident, I don't think you can give him the 3. So I'm going to give Magennis the 3, and I think that's probably based on the fact that he was able to give the ball up for the penalty. When I think if he had have gone and scored that second penalty, then he would have certainly been the 3 points victor anyway with the brace. So yeah. I'm going to say 3 to him. I'm going to give 1 point to Malik Wilks, and I think I'm still going to give 2 points to Louis Coyle. And I don't know if I've just got the clouded vision because of his role in the penalty incident as well. But, it was a 3-0 victory, and I think that you could probably, promisingly give points to anyone in the squad. I don't think anyone was truly out of whack, and, it was a much needed victory.
Yeah, look, I'm with you on Magennis for the 3 votes, particularly for his role in that situation as well. So on the same train of thought there. We were talking before about, when you get a clean sheet, the defenders sometimes go unnoticed. So I'm actually giving the 2 votes to Ingram. I thought he had a great game in that one. I think he's sort of been in and out of the side this season. So it's sort of good to see him starting to get a run of clean sheets with the Wimbledon and the Rochdale game as well. And then Burke for the 1, I thought it was his best game in a while. Got that second goal, really well taken. He's come in for a bit of criticism lately for some of his displays, so I thought he sort of answered those critics quite well in the game on the weekend. On the weekend against Wimbledon. So got my 1 vote for that one.
Yeah.
So and then we're come to our last game. Just yesterday morning it was birthday morning against Rochdale, 2-0 win. Wilks with the opener with a fantastic goal coming in from the right, squeezing it through past the defenders, past the goalkeeper into the near post somehow, which was fantastic. And then it was an Osho own goal apparently, but Tom Eaves up to his old tricks, like that Bowen goal that he stole at the at Middlesbrough. Apparently he's been trying to claim it as his own goal, so don't think he's going to get this one given to him. But look, it was good to see. It's good to see him back out on the field. I know he hasn't had the greatest time in a City shirt, but talking about the need of a deep squad, you want all your players fit and match fit and ready to go for the run in.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he certainly celebrated it as if it was his goal on the pitch. And
yeah, it threw me off. I was sort of dozing during the game, and I sort of went, "Oh, Eaves has scored," and you guys kind of corrected me because I just saw him running off and celebrating.
Yeah. Look, I think I've got a soft spot for Tom Eaves, and I know that will come under immense criticism because I think he's probably, if not the most slated City personality on social media, he's probably second. I think probably behind the Allams and McCann is probably the top 2 at the moment. But I do feel that Tom Eaves does cop his fair share of flack, and and much of it is warranted. But I still just want to go back to the time that we're talking about a guy who is very prolific at this level, and he's got a goal scoring record, although it hasn't been reflected in his time at City. When his time at Gillingham, he is someone who has pedigree at this level, and I think that whilever he sits on our roster and our match sheet and is in and about the squad, every team that, particularly at League One, that sees Tom Eaves as there is concerned about him as a threat. And I think, rightfully so. He's an incredibly passionate striker. And I do like the fact that you can tell that, he absolutely wants to be there.
And was it Rochdale that we played in the FA Cup last season where we won 3-2, where he got the hat-trick? Was it Rochdale or was it someone else? I thought it was another team. I'll have a look. But so
that's right.
Yeah, so I think you're right in terms of he has that goal scoring pedigree at this level, so it's good to see him in the squad and back to fitness. But then look, that player again, Wilks, I think he scored in 4 of the 5 games in this run of games that we've had. And what's that? 3, 5, 7 goals in 5 games or something for him. So he's in a tremendous goal scoring run at the moment.
Yeah, and I just while this is the Malik Wilks show, I think the goal that he did score is one of the biggest criticisms that there is with Malik Wilks that you kind of see everywhere, is that he's too much of a ball hog, and there's so many goals that he kind of costs us because he doesn't provide the service and pick those times to pass. But I mean, that goal he cut inside I think 2 defenders and then kind of dribbled across to finish inside the keeper. Like, if he doesn't have that selfish striker's mentality, there's no way that he goes and scores a goal of that caliber. Yeah. So I think that we have to be, whilst we're entitled to be frustrated, I think we have to take the good with the bad with Malik Wilks and accept that, he is that striker who will frustrate you and hog the ball at times, but the individual brilliance that he does possess, he can hurt teams from anywhere. And that goal was a fantastic example. And certainly the fact that it came relatively early in the game did a lot to kind of settle the nerves, and was probably a big reason why we were able to go on and get that second goal, because Rochdale are a sneakily good attacking side. I know they didn't play fantastic yesterday morning, but if you look at the goals they've scored and the for and against, they've got a woeful defensive record, but their attack is something to be feared.
Yeah, and actually it was Rotherham that we played last season. I get my R teams mixed up, so it wasn't Rochdale in the FA Cup, so I had that one mixed up. But yeah, look, I I think all the best wingers, all those best sort of like wide forwards are selfish by nature because they want to take the ball, they want to cut inside, they want to score the goals. You know, Guzicki and Bowen were the same, as well as other wingers before them, Snodgrass, everyone like that. So it's part and parcel of that role. And you want your strikers to be selfish because you want them to have that confidence, and he showed why because he scored that goal. So you can't sort of pot him for that. Absolutely. And, you know, look, back-to-back clean sheets, back-to-back victories. While I think literally every other side around us dropped points, I think Peterborough were the only ones to pick up a draw. Although I will say, you know, sort of sneakily, Sunderland's starting to creep back up that table into fourth place now, you know, sort of 5 points behind us with 2 games in hand. So, you know, undefeated in 5, really, looking at Sunderland's form. So they're sort of the new Doncaster, if you will. You know, Doncaster, we'll talk in a second about rivals around us and Doncaster losing Darren Moore to Chef Wednesday. But at one point, they were sort of that form team sneaking up behind us. You know, Accrington before that. It looks like now it's Sunderland who's trying to crash that party of the top 3. But look, you know, results kind of going our way on the whole, and it's really giving us every opportunity to make that run for the automatic spots.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I think that, you know, as we've flexed on Malik Wilks this whole episode, you got to remember that the other 2 teams that are flying at the moment is Peterborough and I guess the goals that have been scored by them are coming from Johnson Clark Harris. He's the leading League One scorer. I think he has something absurd, like he's maybe 23 goals or 24 goals, somewhere around that mix, and it's an incredible goal return. And then there's also Charlie Wyke for Sunderland. So, yeah. I mean, the 2 teams that are really starting to fly at the top, you can see that the strikers, and, you know, I guess, as you mentioned, the statistics with Wilks for City recently, that seems to be coinciding with a great goal return from their marquee guys that have, you know, been getting them the results, and we need that to continue.
Yeah, no, definitely. And look, I'll give my 3 votes for this game then before we move on to the previews. But sort of following on, I guess, from his heroics in that Wimbledon game, I'll give Coyle the 3 votes in this one. I thought he was fantastic again from the back. He's really sort of making it hard to press the case for Emmanuel to come back into the side because his performances have just been top draw. I've given Wilks the 2 votes for his goal. I think it's just another fantastic display from him. And I'll give Jones the 1 vote. I think Jones coming back into the side, you know, early in the season, it was all about Smallwood and what Smallwood gave to the side. But I think Jones is sort of proving that he's just as capable in that sort of lockdown midfield sort of role that really frees Honeyman and Doherty up to be much more box to box and active up the field.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Alfie Jones has been an absolute revelation this season. It's great to see him back and playing in the manner that he is. I was similar in the sense of my 3-2-1, but I actually gave my three points to Wilks, and that was purely because of that goal. I think that's one of the better goals I've seen in a City jersey for quite some time. It was really impressive finish. The 2 points I gave Louis Coyle my 2. I thought he was fantastic, and he's, as you mentioned, like, to be keeping Emmanuel out of a squad in certainly every League One team, but I think even most Championship teams, Emmanuel would be starting. And so we have to keep, you know, singing the praises of Louis Coyle because he hasn't really done anything that warrants Emmanuel walking back into the squad, but or at least into the starting lineup. And that's a tough thing to say because I don't think that Emmanuel ever did anything wrong to be out of it. Yeah. And then I went a little bit differently. My 1 point I gave to Jacob Greaves. I thought he was great yesterday as well.
Very nice, very nice. Well, look, that sort of brings us up to date on all the games that have been played. What we'll do now, so obviously we played these sides earlier in the season, so there's not as much history to go into in each of them. But what I thought we'll do is starting with the Bristol Rovers game, where we beat them 3-1 back in October. We can talk about this game, but also talk about the games around us as well, because we've got Lincoln playing Crewe, Doncaster playing Plymouth, and Peterborough playing Burton. So I guess I look at this game against Rovers and sort of think that looking at those other games, it is one that, you know, it takes on that added significance of needing the win because of the quality of the opposition for the sides around us. It's starting to get to that point of the season where you look at the sides that around us, the games that the sides around us are playing, and start to sort of and look out for their results as well. But look, it's as you're sort of saying, we're getting this run in now with these sides that we should be beating. Rovers, sitting in 20th in the table with 2 wins in 5. Is certainly a game that we should be winning and using as a really good opportunity to keep that pressure on the top 2, or I guess on Peterborough and Lincoln.
Yeah, absolutely. And, every fixture is important. But, I mean, we talk about Bristol Rovers having a really poor run of form. It was, I think, only the middle of February where they beat Portsmouth convincingly. So it just speaks back into the unknown nature of these fixtures. And equally, you look at the games that our rivals or our top six opposition have, and you think, they should be beating those teams. It's just as likely that we could do the right thing and turn Bristol over, and they could drop points away, and I wouldn't be surprised. So as much of it is it's like a double negative. It's great for us that we do have those arguably easier teams, but at the same time, you drop points against those teams, and as you mentioned, your rivals pick up points against teams that they should be beating. That's what ultimately is going to make or break the automatic race.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess sort of alluded to just before, but it's interesting as well with Darren Moore leaving Doncaster and heading to Sheff Wednesday. There's a little bit of irony in it for the Doncaster supporters who've been giving McCann stick all season and praising Darren Moore for how fantastically he's been going. And now he's arguably, not arguably, I think he's done a lot worse than what McCann did to them, because he's leaving them high and dry halfway through the season, or 3/4 of the way through the season. At least McCann left in the summer when they were able to bring in Darren Moore, and prepare for the season at that point. But, now being left in the lurch, it looks like their owners are pretty unhappy that he's left as well. So it's not as if they've sort of, given him their blessing to leave. It really sort of puts the cat amongst the pigeons at Doncaster in terms of their promotion chances. And, they were looking quite good, and that the wheels seem to have come off a little bit now.
Yeah, I think there'd be a school of City fans that would be more than happy to drive McCann back there and try and offload it.
I've seen those comments, yeah.
I'm not sure how well received he would be, but yeah, absolutely. I think it's it's an interesting predicament, and I'm glad that it's one we don't have to worry about. You never want to leave your manager certainly in uncertain times, but particularly when you've got a promotion race. But again, once the new manager comes in, I'm sure that they'll get their 3 points with the new manager curse that always seems to be gifted. And I still think that Doncaster have a lot to offer in this top 6, particularly playoff spot race. So they're not done yet.
Definitely. And then it's the big one for us, Peterborough midweek. Lost to them 2-1 at home back in, it was very early, I think it was September or October. And it seems to be the trend this season that, whoever we beat in the first half of the season, we've lost to, and whoever we've lost to, we've beaten. So I'd certainly hope that omen keeps up for this game. And it's one of those games that you kind of go into weirdly confident, because I just feel like City play better against the better sides, and which we've said sort of all along is that we have these poor performances against the weaker sides in the division, but we play the sides when they come at us, and we do seem to perform better. Not so much the high press that Ipswich deployed against us. I think we sort of struggle with that, but sides that leave themselves a bit more open for the counterattack, I think is where we thrive. So. Look, I'm excited for this game. I think this game would go a long way to deciding the table at the end of the season. I'm hoping it's not a draw. I'm hoping it's a decisive result, because I think that sort of will tell the tale for, at that point, what the remaining 11 games will look like for us.
Yeah, and you mentioned that 2-1 victory that they had when they visited the KCOM earlier, and there was a feel about that game that really did have. I still remember the kind of the feeling in the air, and how just it was a great football match. There was some incredible attacking football, and just a real what seemed like a kind of high-end championship fixture. One of the ones that we got kind of grew accustomed to seeing in our promotion charges, and particularly when we had a championship squad that was firing on all cylinders with Grzycki and Bowen. It just that was the way that we seem to approach that game, and I just do wonder with the recent form of Peterborough if it's going to kind of have that same buzz. I do think that Peterborough are starting to emerge as and I said it the first time we played them, I thought they were going to be our biggest threat.
Yeah.
And I still believe that's the case. I'm surprised that they have taken as long to kind of get going as they have been. They were there, then they disappeared, and now they seem to be back again. And I would love to just, as you mentioned, if City can go and take 3 points against Peterborough, I think that would be the statement to the rest of the league, and a really confidence arming statement to really give us the self-belief that we are the team to beat.
Yeah, and there's two types of typical City. There's the really disappointing, expect to win and sort of drop the points typical City. But the typical City that I've grown accustomed to really enjoying is going out and getting that sort of 3-0 win against a promotion rival that we saw earlier in the season against Ipswich, that we saw in the 4-0 win against Portsmouth more recently. And we saw a few times in that second promotion season under Steve Bruce. I've really grown accustomed to enjoying those sorts of typical City performances. So I'd love to see a sort of a 3-0 statement of intent against Peterborough and to really set us up. Because, look, if we look at these two games as really a gettable 6 points, then that would be 12 points from our last 4 games, and 4 wins from 4, and really putting us strongly back on that promotion push. And I sort of look at Lincoln's form starting to teeter a little bit. I think they've lost their last 2 and drawn the one before that, so they've only got 1 win in their last 5. You look at Portsmouth with only 1 win in their last 5. I sort of said before, I guess Sunderland's the biggest threat with 4 wins in their last 5, but all those other sides in that top 6 are all actually starting to look like they're in quite shaky form, apart from ourselves, Peterborough and Sunderland. So if we're able to make it 4 wins in a row and knock off Peterborough in the process, I think that puts us in a really strong stead coming into that last run in the season. And look, as I said before, it also means that when those sides are playing their catch-up games, we can then sit back and rest with those points in the bank.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Remember, there's still, we talk about these fixtures being crucial, and they absolutely are, but we're still talking about, we're looking down the barrel of 13 more games or 13 more fixtures of our own. And then, as you mentioned, more for our opposition. So, there is a long, long way to go, but you put yourself in the conversation and you knock over the teams that are really, at the top of the tree. It just goes a long way for not only the score and the table, but the mentality as well.
Yeah, no, certainly. Look, there's a long way to go, but I think, you blink and suddenly it'll be another half dozen games gone, and we'll be looking at the last sort of handful of games. So it can creep up on us quickly. And I think, we kind of keep saying it, but I think that sort of emphasizes why it's a great thing having the points in the bank already, because those sides will start to, 1 win in 5 for Lincoln, you start to think that they're going to be scrambling for the wins to pick up the points on us. Yes, they've got the 2 games in hand, but if they lose those games in hand, then it suddenly tells a completely different story. So I don't know when those catch-up games are scheduled to be played, but I think I'm hoping that that's not sort of, the last couple of weeks of the season. I'm hoping it's in the next month, because that then gives us a much clearer picture in the final run-in on where we stand.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, long way to go. It's going to be an enjoyable ride.
Enjoyable ride, absolutely. As has this episode, has been an enjoyable one. So thank you for joining me for it, Logan.
My pleasure, Alex. It was good fun.
No problem. And look, thanks everyone for listening in. It's good to be back. We've been off for a couple of weeks, but it's good to be back. And we'll be looking at the last few games in the run-in over the next month and a bit, I guess. So look, it's going to be an exciting ride. And until next time,